Hello, welcome back. I'm JIAT, an undergraduate of the JAMA Institute for Advanced Technology. Welcome back with the project name Bishop, and today we're going to discuss about the program of the user profile updating process. So here we can see the profile image of the users displayed here, and also the name and the email address. And then in these fields, the first name, last name, and the mobile number also displayed. And then in these three fields we can change the given data, but in the password, email, and registered date fields we are not able to change those data. But here data visible to the user, and through this button we can show the password and hide the password. And then we are able to change this address line 1, line 2, and then the province, district, postal code, and city also. And then through this update my profile button, the profile data is updated. So then let's move to the code of this. Here within the PHP script I have included the connection.php file, and then I'm checking whether a session with the name u is set. If not, we can see in this else part of the if condition. Here we are closing the PHP script and opening that again. Here within those two we are code within the script tag and write type as window.location equal index.php. So if the session by the name u is set, if so, then we get the value stored by the name email in the session by the name u and storing that in a variable called email. And then we execute a search query through this search function as select all from the user table, and here we use an inner join, and then we inner join the gender table on the user gender id is equal to the gender id, where the email is equal to the email that we have got, and then storing the values we obtain back in a variable called details result set. And then in a variable called image rs we store the value get back through this search function, which includes select all from profile image table, where user email equals to the email that we have got. And then similarly we storing the values get back from this search function in the variable called address rs. And then the query select all from the user has address table, and we inner join the city table on the user has address table city id equals to the city table city id. And then we again inner join the district table on city tables district id equals to the district tables district id. And then again inner join the province table on the district tables province id is equal to the province tables province id, where the user email is equal to the email we have got. And after that we obtain the data stored in this variable through the fetch as well, can store in that in a variable called user details. Similarly the value stored in image rs, and through the fetch as well we store the data in that variable in the variable called image details. And then in the address result set through the fetch as well we store the data in a variable called address details. And then here's the profile image viewing part. Here inside PHP script we check whether the value that's stored by the name path in the array called image details is empty, as we have stored the URL of the image in a column called path in the profile image table. And we check whether if that path is empty. If so, we are displaying a default image through this image tag. If not, if the user has given his profile image, so we display that profile image through the src of the image tag, as inside the PHP script we echo the path of the profile image that stored in this array called image details. And then here we display the name of the user. Firstly inside the PHP script we echo the first name of the user that's stored in the array called user details, and we concat the last name of the user that's stored in the same array called user details. And then we echo the email address that's stored in the variable called email, which we have got through the session called u. And then for this update profile image label I have given an on click function as change profile image. In these two image tags I have given the id as image, and then in this input tag I have given the id as profile image. And then let's move to the JavaScript code to discuss about this change profile image function. I have obtained the element with the id profile image and stored that in a variable called image, and then I am calling an anonymous function on the change of this element with the profile image id, and inside that I'm storing the file that we obtained through this in a variable called file, and then we creating a variable called URL and storing a created URL for the file that we have obtained through the window.url.createObjectURL function, and then we obtain the element with the ID image, and then we set the src of that element to value of the variable URL, and then let's again move to the user profile.php file, and then in the input field related to the first name label for the value of this value attribute, we have given the value that's stored by the name fname in the array called user details within the PHP script. I'm giving an ID for this input label as fname, and then for the input field that related to the last name, there too I'm setting the value of this value attribute as the value that's stored by the name lname in the array called user details, and echo that as the value here, and then give an ID for that input as lname. And similarly for the mobile field within the PHP script, echo the value that's stored by the name mobile that's stored in the array called user details and set in the ID as mobile. For the input field related to the password label, there too for the value attribute within the PHP script, we echo the value that's stored by the name password in the array called user details, and then I have given an ID for that input field as password pw, and then I have called the onClick function as show password. Within the show password function, I have obtained the element with the ID pw and stored that in a variable called password, and then check in whether if the type of this element called password is equal to password, and then I'm changing the type of it to text to show the password. In this condition, we change the type of this password to password to hide the password again, and then let's again move to the user profile.php, and in this email field, here too in the input tag related to this email label within the PHP script for the value of this value attribute, we echo the value that's stored by the name email in the array called user details, and then for the registered date, there too we echo the value that's stored in the array called user details by the name join date within the as the value of this value attribute. And in this address line on label, we again open in the PHP script and we check whether if the address details line on is empty, we use this input tag without any value attribute. If this come to the else condition, else part of this, we use the input tag with the value attribute with the value as the stored value by the name line1 in the array called address detail. And for these two input tags, I have given an ID as line1, and then in the address line2 section, similarly I have checked whether if this is empty, then I have used an input tag without any value attribute. If this come to the else condition of this if condition, that means there is a value that's stored in the line2. Here too I have used an input tag with the value attribute, and I have called the value by the name line2. I have called a search function here, and then I have executed the query select all from the province table, and then I have stored the values that we obtained in a variable called province rs, and then similarly select all from the district table, and then storing the values that we have obtained in a variable called district rs, and then inside the search function select all from the city table, and there too we have stored the values we have obtained in a variable called city rs. And then in the select tag related to the province label, by skipping the option with the value 0, which includes the text as select province, we have given the PHP script, and inside that we have used the for loop here and written a variable as I and assigning the value 0 to it, and checking whether the value of I is less than the number of rows in the province rs, and then we have used the increment here, and through the fetch of province rs, we store the data in the province rs variable in a variable called province data, and then we close again the PHP script, and then we use the option, and as the value of this option tag, I have echoed the value that's stored by the name province id in the array called province data, and after that again inside a PHP script, I have checked whether value that's stored in the project id in the array called address details is not empty. I'm again checking whether the value that's stored in the province is stored by the name province id in the array called province data is equal to the value that's stored by the name province ID in the array called address details. If so, if these two are equal, then I'm using the selected attribute for this option and echo the value that's stored by the name province name in the array called province data. And then in the next label related to the postal code, inside if condition we check whether the postal code that's stored in a variable in the array called address details is empty. If so, we use the input tag here with the ID code. In the else part of this if condition, we use the input tag here with the same ID as p code. In addition to that, we use the value attribute here with the value as the postal code that's stored in the array called address detail. And then at last field which related to the gender, put field related to that, we have echoed the value stored by the name gender name in the array called user details as the value of this value attribute. For the button with the text update my profile, we have used an on-click function here as update profile. Within the update profile function, we have obtained all the fields with the related IDs, and after that we have created a new form data and stored that in a variable called form. And here I have appended some values to that form. Here I have obtained the array code files and then with the value I here, and then I have created a new XML HTTP request and stored that in a variable called request, and then checking the change in status of this request and calling an anonymous function here. Inside that we have used a if condition and checked whether the status of the request variable is equal to 200 and the ready state of this request is equal to 4. If so, then we get the response text of this request and storing that in a variable called response. And then I will discuss about this part after discussing this update profile process.php file. We use the open function here, and then here we tell which method we use here. We use the post method here and send in the data to the update profile process.php file, and then we use the true here as to represent. We use the ajax method here, and then at last we send the request with the form that we have created. So then let's move to the update profile process.php file. Here at the very beginning I have used a PHP script here, and then inside that I have started a session, and then after that I have included our connection.php file, and then I have obtained the value that's stored by the name email in the session called u and stored that email in the variable called email here. And then I have obtained the values that come from the JS file to this PHP file through the relevant name, and then I have called a search function here. Inside that I have used the select all from the user table where the email equals to the email that we have got from the session and storing that in a variable called user result set. Inside this if condition I have checked whether the number of rows that we have obtained through this is equal to 1. If so, we use an IUD function here, and inside that we use the update query here as update the user table and set the first name or the fname column with the value fname that we have obtained, and then the value of the lname column, set that value to lname that we have obtained, and then we set in the column name mobile with the value that we have stored in the variable called mobile, where we use the where clause to specify the relevant user, and we specify the relevant user by the email, and then we check the email is equal to the email that's stored in the variable called email. Here again we use a search function which includes select all from user has address table where user email equals to the email that we have got, and then is storing the values that we have obtained in a variable called address result set. And then inside if condition I'm checking whether the number of rows in is equal to 1, and then again calling an IUD function, and then I'm updating the user has address table and setting the values to these columns city ID column with the value that's stored in the variable called city, and then the line 1 column with the value that's stored in the variable called line 1, and then the line 2 column with the value that's stored in the variable called line 2, and then the postal code we set the value to that as the value that stored in the variable called p code, and then we use the where clause here to specify the relevant user. We use the condition of this where clause as the user email is equal to the email that's stored in the variable called email, and then in the else condition of this if condition. Here too we call an IUD function. Inside that we insert into the user has address table. To this we specify the columns that we use to insert the data. The columns are the user email, city ID, line 1, line 2 and postal code, and then as the values we store the value that's stored in the variable called email, and then the value stored in the variable called city, and then the value stored in the variable called line 1, and then line 2, and then at last the p code. And after that, inside if condition we are checking whether the number of files in this file array is equal to 1. We checking the size of this, and then we check whether that is equal to 1. If so, we store in the file that comes with the id I that comes through the file array in a variable called image, and then we obtain the type of this image variable or the image that we have stored in this image variable in a variable called image extension, and then we are creating an array here with the values image jpg comma then the image png, image svg plus xml, and then storing that array in a variable called allowed image extension. And then inside an if condition I am checking whether the image extension that we have got is in the array that we have created called allowed image extensions. If so, we are creating a variable as new image extension without assigning a value to it. And then inside if condition again we check whether the image extension is equal to jpeg. If so, we are assigning the value of this new image extension variable as .jpeg. If not, and then we again check whether the image extension is equal to image/png. If not png. If so, we are assigning the value of this new image extension variable as .png, and if not, we again check whether the image extension is equal to svg plus xml. If so, we are assigning the value of this new image variable as .svg. And then here we are creating the file name that we use to store the image as resources /profile image .fname. We use the first name of the user, and then we use an underscore here, and we use the unique id function, and then at last we give the new image extension and store in the relevant image path in a variable called file name. And then we use the move uploaded file function here, and we get the temporary name of this image, and then we set the image name as the value that's stored in the variable called file name. And then again we use a search function here and select all from the profile image table where the user email is equal to the email that we have got, and storing that in a variable called profile image rs. And then inside if condition we again check whether the number of rows in it is equal to 1. If so, we use an IUD function here which includes the update the profile image table and set the value of this path column with the value as the file name that's stored in the variable called file name, where we use the where clause here to specify the user relevant user. We use the condition of this where clause as the user email is equal to email, and then we use an echo here as updated. If not, in the else of this if condition we use again an IUD function here. There too we insert into the profile image and we specify the relevant columns as path and user email, and then we set in the values as the file name for this path column, and then the email that's stored in this a variable called email, setting that value to this user email column. And there too we echo text as saved here. And then in the else condition of the if that we checked whether the size of files is equal to 1, and there we use an else if here, and we check whether if the number of files in the array code files is equal to 0, then we echo a message as you have not selected any image, and if not, we echo a message as you must select only one profile image. And then in this if condition we checks whether the user result set is equal to 1. In the else part of that if condition we echo a message as invalid user. So then let's move again to this script.js file, and then here inside this if condition we check whether the response is equal to updated or the response is equal to saved. If so, we use the reload function here, and if not, we use an if else if condition here as the response is equal to you have not selected any image. Then we again use an alert here as you have not selected any image, and then we again use the reload function here, and then as the last else part of this if condition, we alert a message as response if these if conditions become false. And then let's check whether this is working, and then I will change the first name to Sahan. Let's click on this update my profile. Here we can see now the first name has changed to Sahan. Here for the user by this password, the first name has changed to Sahan here, and then here too we can see a new profile image path has been created with the name called Sahan. And then the next video I'll discuss about a design of a responsive product registration page, and bye for now.